Welcome back! So flower photography has always felt like a quiet conversation with nature. Every flower, no matter how large or small, has its own character, its own sense of presence and its own moment in time. And yes, photographing flowers is more than just pointing a camera at something pretty. It's a way of capturing something special. And over the years I've learned countless lessons through experimentation, patience, trial and error. And each photo I've taken has taught me something new, and today I want to share some of my favorite flower photography tips with you. My goal here is not to give you rules, but to help you to find your own creative workflow while photographing flowers. So let's get started. Before I even think about raising the camera, I always like to take a minute to simply observe the flower. Because every flower has a kind of personality, a presence that influences how it should be photographed. And yes, thinking in terms of personality helps you to decide which aspect of the flower you want to highlight. Maybe it's the symmetry, the color, the shape, the texture, or the way it catches light. Once you understand what makes that specific flower interesting, the rest of your decision becomes way more intentional. And yes, perspective in flower photography is everything. Many people just shoot flowers from above, but this angle often flattens the scene and doesn't tell the full story of it. In this case, lowering your perspective even slightly can change everything. For example, shooting at eye level with the flower makes it feel alive and gives it a sense of presence, almost like a portrait. It also opens up the background in a way that allows more depth and atmosphere to enter the frame. Going even lower, so shooting from underneath the flower, can also reveal unique details. At the end of the day, changing your perspective also means exploring all kind of angles, compositions and even close-up framing. Each angle tells a different story, and even a small movement left or right can give you a complete different photo. And of course in this case we need to talk about light, because light is the soul of flower photography. Basically the type of light you choose will determine the mood of your images more than any other factor. Early morning light is great because it's soft, gentle and slightly cool. It wraps around the flower and creates a calm, peaceful atmosphere. The golden hour brings a different emotion. During this time the warm tones enhance reds, oranges and yellows and create a dreamy glow that feels warm and inviting. One of my favorites are cloudy days. Cloudy days are perfect for flower photography because clouds act as a giant softbox. Light becomes diffused and even, reducing harsh shadows and helping colors become rich, saturated and true. In this case you can easily set your focus more on details and textures without worrying about harsh highlights. But yeah, midday light, which is often harsh, can be challenging, but it's not impossible. If midday is the only time you could shoot, shading the flower with your body or using a small diffuser helps to soften the light enough to capture some photos. Another thing that I really like to do is to isolate the subject to separate it beautifully from the background. Using wide apertures produce dreamy backgrounds that makes the flower stand out. In combination, the shallow depth of field also allows you to control exactly what part of the flower is sharp. Depending on how close you get, even a small movement can completely change the shot, so use that to get specific results. But what's about details? Because flowers contain incredible details that are easy to overlook. The closer you get, the more the flower reveals. Water droplets are especially great. Sometimes a photo of a single water drop can be just as powerful as an entire flower. So don't be afraid to just set your focus on specific highlights, it's always worth it. And that's a perfect opportunity to talk about composition. Composition is the foundation of any strong flower photo, and spending just a few extra moments thinking about how you frame the scene can elevate your images a lot. Sometimes the flower belongs in the center, especially when it has a strong symmetry or when you want to emphasize balance. Other times placing the flower slightly off center creates a more dynamic feeling and gives the photo space to breathe. And of course filling the frame is another powerful approach, especially when you want the viewer to feel immersed in the details. Your composition can also be enhanced by including foreground elements such as shooting through leaves or other flowers to create depth and a sense of softness around the frame. And of course in combination, background awareness is also super important, because even the most beautiful flower can be overshadowed by a distracting background. So taking a moment to adjust your angle, step slightly to one side or lower your perspective can completely transform the background as well. But don't get me wrong here, of course the background doesn't need to be empty, but it should support the subject rather than compete with it. Another topic that we need to talk about is weather, because weather is an underrated but incredibly important part of flower photography. A rainy morning creates water droplets, and fog adds a mystical, dreamy atmosphere that softens colors and simplifies backgrounds. Even shadows from clouds can give you moments of soft, diffused light. So learning to adapt to weather rather than fight it opens up creative possibilities you might not expect. And yes, some of my favorite flower photos were taken during conditions most people avoid, so don't be afraid to get out there even if the conditions are not perfect. Now let's quickly talk about lenses, because different lenses offer different ways of telling the story of the flower. Macro lenses like the 100mm here allow you to capture details easier. Standard prime lenses such as 35mm let you include more of the environment, creating storytelling images that show the flower in context. Each lens has its own style, and exploring these styles helps you to find new approaches and new ways to capture specific shots. So yeah, switching lenses from time to time forces you to rethink your compositions and see the scene from a fresh perspective. But one of the best things about flower photography is that you don't need to travel far to find beautiful beautiful subjects. Because flowers are everywhere. They're in backyards, they grow along sidewalks, in parks, forests, and so on. They're accessible, which means you can practice this craft anytime. The key is not where you find them, but how you see them. Once you start looking at flowers with intention, you will begin noticing opportunities everywhere you go. But one of my favorite tips is, flower photography rewards patience. I mean, flowers move gently in the wind, the lighting condition changes all the time, and even the slightest adjustment can make or break a composition. And taking your time allows you to notice details you might have missed otherwise. Observing the way the light falls, watching how the colors shift as a cloud moves overhead, or waiting for the wind to settle can be the difference between an average shot and a breathtaking one. In this case, the more patient you become, the more thoughtful your compositions will be, and the more connected you will feel to your subject. When you actually spend a moment truly looking at the flower, observing its structure, studying the light and waiting for the right moment, you become more present. So yeah, flower photography encourages stillness in the world that rarely slows down. It teaches patience and awareness. It also teaches you to see beauty in small things, in textures you never noticed before, and in moments you might usually walk past without a second thought. And this presence translates into your photography, giving your images emotion, intention, and meaning. So yeah, at the end of the day, when you combine all these ideas, you create a new way of seeing flowers. And exactly that's why I mentioned that this isn't about rules or technical perfection. It's about developing your own style. Flower photography becomes a dialogue between you and the subject, where you learn something new each time you take a photo. And at the end of the day, your images become more expressive, more intentional, and more connected to your own creative vision. But what's your favorite tip? Let me know that in the comments. So, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're new here, don't forget to smash that subscribe button to stay updated for upcoming videos, and I'll see you in the next video.